You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Bring this meeting to order. This is February 10th, 2022. It is 7 o'clock. We have the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse meeting regularly scheduled for this evening. The agenda is on the town's website as well as additional documentation. This meeting is being held in accordance with Public Act 21-2. When you are not speaking, please mute your microphone so that we can have good quality audio. And when you are, if you wish to speak, you can raise your hand through the Zoom device, and we'll make sure we acknowledge the raised hand. Any other housekeeping items? No, as I said, the agenda is on the town website. First up is a roll call of commissioners. Commissioner Finaro? Present? Are you present? Okay. Commissioner Grenache?
Present.
Commissioner Begeman?
Commissioner Begeman, present.
Commissioner Boda?
Commissioner Boda, present.
Did I get everybody? Commissioner Basserman, present? I guess that's it for the moment. We expecting anybody else, Abby?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, hopefully they'll join in progress. First up is minutes for approval. We have the January 13th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner
Yes,
Reynolds,
Commissioner.
I'll make a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes of January 13th.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Finaro seconds that motion.
Any discussion on the minutes? I'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, next up, we have the February 7th, 2022 special meeting minutes, which was a site walk conducted at 2 Sander Drive. Short and sweet. Is there a motion? One more time. Is there a motion to approve the special meeting minutes of February?
All right, Commissioner Reynolds, I'll make a motion that we approve the special meeting site walk minutes of February 7th.
Anybody else want to second approve it?
Commissioner Finaro seconds that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Bassman's going to abstain.
Commissioner Boda, abstain.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Begeman, abstain.
Is there a rule, Jamie, regarding quorum for approval for minutes?
No, you just have to have the majority. So if one person had voted yes and one person had voted no, then it couldn't carry. But you only, for those kind of votes, you only have to have the majority.
I'm not sure we do.
For minutes, it's fine,
For minutes, it's
especially
fine?
for minutes of a site walk that didn't have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Next up, application for review. First up Inland Wetland 211102, 140 to 240 Austin Ryer Lane, repair and replacement of a drainage outlet. Additional documentation is on the Dropbox on the town website. Any need to set this up, Jamie, or do we go right to the applicant?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I'll just mention, I did prepare a staff report for this. We have received some revised materials since then, so some of the conditions may be kind of no longer necessary. But we do have revised plans that addressed some of the outstanding things I was hoping to get some answers to. And we also did receive a bond estimate. Lately, the commission's practice has been to require that prior to start of site work. I don't know if the commission wants to, if you get to the point of deliberating, considering that bond amount as part of the conditions of approval. This item either needs to be acted upon tonight, or you need to request another extension from the applicant. I think that one more extension can be granted.
Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant, and I guess if you could address the recent information that Jamie alluded to, that would be helpful.
Good evening, Pete Parent with CHA, professional engineer representing the Merritt Properties and the Island Village View 2. Jamie, is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, try now.
So I think, we've reviewed this set of plans with you folks a few times here, and last month we kind of came to the discussion that we needed to do some compensatory area for this intermittent water course that's downstream of the scour hole that was created by the failure of the drainage system. And we kind of preliminary talked about doing some plantings in this area. So we worked with our professional wetland scientist that CHA has on staff, and kind of followed the general idea of what we presented last month. We were proposing these leave-in-place compost filter socks that will, create a little bit of a microtopography in here and take some of the water that discharges out of this scour hole from the drainage system and spread it out over this area prior to discharging to the existing wetlands. And we're proposing to plant this area with a selection of shrubs and a few trees to kind of replicate the existing wooded wetland that surrounds. One of the issues that was brought up is that we were previously proposing a green ash for one of the trees, and Jamie had raised a concern about the emerald ash borer. So in response to that, we switched that to this black tupelo, which is much better pest resistance. In addition to the plantings below the scour hole, in response to some of the feedback we got from the commission last month, we're also proposing these compost filter socks that are 12 inches in diameter to remain in place to provide additional, more permanent erosion control. I know this whole slope is going to be seeded with hydroseed with tackifier and a special seed mix designed for steep slopes, and it'll have erosion control blanket on it. But in addition to that, we're also providing these larger filter socks that will provide a little bit more microtopography, a little bit more impedance to water flow to kind of break that slope up, and eventually, they'll decay and create these little ridges in this hillside to kind of continually slow flow, while this area that needs to be cleared in order to make this drainage system construction possible to grow back in and get a little bit more vegetated and stable. The other issue that was raised that we provided some clarity on is stormwater operation and maintenance. So we've got a construction phase operation and maintenance plan, requirements of the contractor to, inspect and maintain the new catch basin sump and the scour hole during their portion of the project. And then also post-development requirements for the owner to continue inspecting and maintaining the catch basin sump and the scour hole after it's been transferred to their possession. And I think, this is pretty standard stuff. Catch basins are inspected like twice a year and typically cleaned annually. Ideally, we like to see cleaning of catch basins to happen in that sweet spot between the end of winter and the beginning of the rainy spring season. It allows you to capture the majority of the sediment. But anytime, throughout the year, if you're cleaning that sump out, you're providing more capacity to capture those sediments and floatables with the design of the system, the catch basin with the deep sump from the outlet hood. And then the scour hole itself, typically they're almost maintenance free. But we've been having an annual inspection just to make sure that, because of the history of this location has of having a failed outlet, we just want to make sure that it's continuing to function the way the design plans intended to be. So if anyone has any questions about what's changed or anything on the previous things that we reviewed, I'm happy to answer, but that's what's changed since last month.
This is Commissioner Bassett. I guess I have a question on the 5 rows of, what'd you say, socks that you were going to put in for erosion controls?
Yes.
You talked about those decaying. How long do you expect these to take to decay till it turns into that terraced effect?
So they'll create that terraced effect as soon as they're installed, but they will decay. The manufacturer's literatures say that they're good for about 18 months before they start to get to a point where you couldn't reposition them or something like that. So somewhere in the range of 18 months to 2 years is when I would expect that they would be in a decayed condition.
And as a follow-up, because I guess they're being put in with the objective of decaying, that there would be no maintenance for these erosion controls?
Correct. So these are going to be placed on top of the rolled erosion control blanket, just as an additional measure to continue to further slow the flow down this slope, while the slope kind of takes hold. The vegetation that's planted takes hold.
Another question, given the change now with these erosion controls put in place, was there any change to the hydrological effect on the site? And
no, so, I mean, this is a large slope that all flows to this wetland system that all ends up discharging towards the Piscah Brook here. These won't prevent flow. The flow will filter through the compost, and it'll just kind of slow things down. It won't prevent flow from making its way down the hill.
Okay, so no hydrological calculation changes were factored into whatever the final design is, given the fact that you're saying the total amount of water doesn't change. Maybe the time dimension changes, but not the total amount of water.
Correct. Yeah. So the design of the scour hole and all that, the impervious surface is still going to be all flowing through the pipe, and we're actually providing that double catch basin to capture more of that impervious surface flow in the drainage system and prevent it from overflowing onto the steep slope to kind of reduce the erosion potential on that end of things as well. But total amount of water that's going to make it the wetland isn't going to change.
Thank you.
Yep.
Amy Frederick and the wetland agent. I just want to mention real quick that Melissa Papatones, commissioner, has joined the meeting. She joined about 5 minutes ago. Chairman, I'm assuming that she's seated.
Absolutely. Welcome, Melissa.
Mr. Parent, this is Commissioner Boda. Can we just going back to the filter sock for a second? Can you, I'm looking at the revised plan, and I'm wondering if you can just kind of review what is the external material? What's the internal material? Just talk a little bit more in detail about that, that material.
Sure. So the specific brand that we have called out here has a biodegradable mesh that's filled with wood fiber, and the wood fiber is treated to make sure that it doesn't have invasive pests or invasive species seeds in it. It's all kind of inert material, but it is a wood product. So it's basically a wood chip filled biodegradable stocking, for lack of a better term, that you then lay along the slope and drive stakes through to hold it in place. So it kind of it creates a filter, but it doesn't need to be dug in the way a silt fence needs to be dug in.
And the biodegradable mesh, you said, breaks down in 18 to 2 years, and that's in environments like ours, or that's a general specification from the company?
That's their general time frame. Obviously, if you're in different environments, you may get a slower or faster rate of biodegrading, but that's their average rate.
These are more out of curiosity than anything. I mean, do you have you used different versions of these before? Like, why particularly this one? I mean, I would prefer a biodegradable and not something that's encased in plastic, obviously, that has to be removed. But I'm curious why this particular one over another.
Yeah, we've had success with these on previous projects and found them to be a pretty good product. We find that the ones that are made out of straw are a good short term, but don't really provide any long-term benefit, is what we're looking for here. The ones that are made out of straw are good for a couple of months, and then they kind of flatten out and don't really do a whole lot. We have also used a product where it's more of a photobiodegradable netting, and those were actually filled with wood chips from the site, which was unique and was a good solution. But with this site kind of being in a shaded area, it's actually one of the comments from the reviewer that we changed our erosion control blanket, because our erosion control blanket was actually called out to be. Now we have a biodegradable. You may get too long, it may last for too long, and end up being a nuisance. So that's why we went with the biodegradable product, and we went with the wood chip because the wood chips hold up for a decent amount of time, but also degrade and create a natural topography in the end.
So this is Commissioner Boda again. So you've used this particular version of the filter sacks before on previous sites successfully, and you've seen their progression over time, so that you've seen them kind of meet what the company has specified in the field.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, are you signed off or okay with the planting plan as presented here?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I did review the planting plan as far as species, and I think the plants are appropriate. I was just a little bit concerned, like already stated, with the green ash, as I know there are a lot of ash trees in Branford specifically that have been hit pretty hard. So I suggested a second look at that.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Boda. So I think that Mr. Parent said that was changed, right? That that the ash has been changed, so that one's resolved.
Correct, it's been changed to Tupelo.
And the long-term maintenance plan, has that been addressed satisfactorily?
Long-term maintenance plans for the stormwater have been provided, and I think that they're appropriate for the scale of the project. And then also because mitigation was required per section 7.9 of the regs, 7.10 kicks in, which requires the monitoring of the mitigation area for 5 years, and which also requires the submission of a bond. The bond needs to cover the plantings and the monitoring. I don't think it necessarily needs to include the erosion controls. So that would be something the commission could consider at that point.
Any other questions, comments from the commission? Should we look at the staff report regarding the conditions of approval?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think that would be appropriate, and I think that we do probably next need to talk about the bond.
Yeah, it's I don't know, a strange one on the erosion controls because they're designed to decay. You know, as opposed to a bond for something that we hope would stay in place.
So Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, they do also have silt fence proposed for while the project is underway. So the silt socks are primarily long-term erosion controls. They do have one proposed for the project as well, but when they're laying the new system and removing the old system, they do have some silt fence proposed as well. So, and the applicant has submitted a bond estimate, which I can share with the commission as well. I don't know if you want to look at that prior to the staff report or. All right, so the bond estimate includes trees, shrubs, seed and loam, the filter socks for the long-term part of the project and the monitoring. And then they separated out based on my comment, the erosion controls for the actual installation and removal of the old system, which includes the tracking pad, silt fence, the filter sock, which goes at the outlet end of the project, and the inlet protection for the catch basin.
And this is Commissioner Boda. And those, some of those sediment and erosion controls, you know, if they were done in two segments like that, we would not likely, I'm thinking that we would not likely need to hold the erosion and sediment control bond for the 5 years once things have been stabilized, that would be a shorter term bond versus the wetland mitigation plantings that would be for the 5 years.
The commission has had a past practice of reducing a bond amount upon request if an item for which the bond is for has been completed. So yes, it could be a much shorter period of time.
Is it worth just going quickly through the conditions of approval, which started on page 3 of the staff report?
All right, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. The first condition is standard inspections, pre-construction, erosion control, pre-planting, planting, inspection upon completion of planting, and final inspection upon completion of work. General condition about weather conditions being monitored to help ensure that erosion potential is reduced. Number 3 has been addressed, so that one is not applicable. Number 4, just making sure that if appropriate, that female and male plants are provided to have berry production. Number 5 is also no longer applicable. It's already been addressed. And then number 6 is the bond. And this is kind of our standard language that we use. It says a bond shall be submitted to cover the completion of the above items and maintenance of all project erosion and sedimentation controls for the site development. So currently, as it reads, it would include the erosion controls. And then it also includes the monitoring for the 5 years to ensure the 85% survival and stability of the project. And then number 7 is just a general condition that we have that the wetland scientists may approve an alternative for the plants because sometimes availability of plants is a problem, and it's easier to just keep them on task if that can be swapped out for an appropriate alternative. Number 8 is requesting certification that the project is completed as designed. And then number 9, certification that final cleaning of the stormwater system occurred after completion of construction. And then we have the standard conditions and general provisions of all permits.
Do we, item, this is Commissioner Bassman, do we have to include both elements of the both the wetland mitigation as well as the erosion controls in item 6, as opposed to only including the mitigation activity, as opposed to having to wait then for the applicant to request a reduction in the bond?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. Let me just look up the regulation language real quick. I think it's a little bit open-ended. In the regulation, it states, if compensation is proposed or required as a condition of approval, a management plan is required that must include but is not limited to the following criteria. And then it says a bond in accordance with section 13 shall be posted for a period of no less than 5 years. As we've stated, the commission has already has a past practice of reducing certain items that aren't necessary with the 5 years of monitoring before that 5 years, but it doesn't itemize what items must be in the bond. So I think it's up to the commission to determine what's necessary.
Commissioner Basserman, this is Rhoda, Commissioner Rhoda. Are you thinking about only requiring the bond for the planting and not for the erosion controls?
Well, I guess certainly the plantings, and I guess Jamie mentioned that there's basically 2 erosion controls. One is the socks that we spent some time talking about, and the other is erosion controls different than that. And I guess it's that plus the mitigation area that I think the bond needs to be required for.
Right. So this is Commissioner Brown. I think, Jamie, can you go back to the estimates for the bond?
Right.
So I think, I mean, these numbers seem reasonable, yes? I mean,
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I just received this today. I haven't really compared it to anything, but generally speaking, yes, the shrubs might be a little bit low, but I think it's reasonable.
So, I mean, I think it would make sense to do this for under 6 for the bond, that we can accept these numbers for the bond. And then when the site is stabilized, they can come back for the erosion and sediment control earlier. I think that
Okay,
The sock isn't even really, it's not part of the erosion control items. It's underneath the wetland mitigation. So I don't think they're looking to, I think it's a non-issue.
thank you. Yep, I see that.
So can we go ahead?
Yeah, is there,
Do you want a motion, Mr. Chairman?
I would love a motion, Commissioner Grenache.
I'll make a motion that we approve the application IW 21.11.02 140-240 Austin Ryle Lane for the repair and replacement of the drainage outlet, and with the following conditions as set forth on pages 3 and 4 of the of what presented by staff, excluding item 3 and item 5, which I understand is taken care of other on the drawings, and that the bond cover the erosion controls in addition to the plantings and monitoring.
This is Commissioner Boda. I would second the motion.
Any discussion? I just have a question. Do we automatically assume that the standard conditions apply, or do we have to explicitly state that?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, it would be good practice to state that the standard conditions and general provisions apply.
Mr. Greenwich, I'll modify my motion to include that the approval is conditioned on the standard conditions and general provisions on issuance. I had mentioned pages 3 and 4, and I thought it was inclusive of all.
This is Commissioner Boda. I also accept the amendment to the motion.
Any further discussion? Okay, we're going to take a roll call vote. Commissioner Boda,
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Begeman,
Commissioner Begemon, aye.
Commissioner Finaro,
Commissioner Finaro, aye.
Commissioner Papatonis,
Commissioner Papatonis, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye.
Commissioner Greenwich, aye.
Oh, thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Should be everyone.
That should be everyone. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, inland wetland 21-1203, 26, 24, and 28 Old New England Road, the construction of a new single-family home. Turn it over to you, Jamie.
If I could interrupt really quick, I apologize. I'm Christopher Burr. I'm speaking on behalf of 2 Sandra Drive. I had some technical difficulty getting on while you guys discussed us first. I was just curious as to.
We haven't gotten to your item yet.
Not yet.
Oh.
You're going to be next after this one.
Put on the agenda for applications.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
No problem. Jamie, back to New England Road.
All right. Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I will. So we did receive revised plans. I did meet out on the site with the property owner and the soil scientist since our last meeting. I kind of had a question regarding whether any of the trees in the wetland area would be directly impacted via the construction. We took a look. There were no trees that were leaning over where the house was proposed, so there's no anticipated tree removal at this time. And the owner is aware that should he get approval, that any removal of trees in the wetland would have to come back. And the revised plans do include some revised grading for the driveway, which extends onto property on 24 Old New England Road, which is why we have 24 and 28 on there as well, because the grading extends onto both of those properties. Both of those property owners have submitted a letter authorizing that they've seen the site plan and that they're okay with the submission of the application. And again, I do have a staff report prepared for this application. I can screen share, or if the applicant wants to share the plan so that they can point things out. Either's fine.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the applicant.
Hey, this is Dave Nafis, professional engineer with Nafis and Young Engineers. Yeah, I can screen share. I have the plan up. So from the last meeting, you were asked for basic existing conditions plan. This is what it looks like today. Basically, you can see the wooded areas. This is the wooded area. And this entire site is wooded. So moving forward, if I can get that to come down. The new tree line is going to be on our property is going to be this area here. Obviously up the driveway, and in this area over here, this will be cleared, but the tree, everything in here is going to stay wooded as it is. We have from the septic tank to the thing, we have a force main, but this is a flexible line, and this can be snaked between the trees, and then the path of least resistance doesn't have to be laid straight or anything. It just has to be kind of laid on a slight uphill grade. So, but that isn't a problem. So this area will be disturbed for a day at the most, and it'll be covered. It's only going to be a 6-inch wide trench, and that's all that'll be in that area. What we had to do as far as for zoning is they require a 3-to-1 slope on the side of the driveway. So the limit of our grading will be in this area here. And we've incorporated into the grading which is currently going on in this site now. They're currently doing, so the neighbors, they've agreed to kind of allow us to grade, and we'll make it look nice and pretty. We're going to install a curb down this one side of the driveway here. So none of this water is going to run off. It's all going to kind of come back on his property and go through the level spreader at the end of the driveway. So none of the.
Mr. Nafis, can you zoom in a few degrees? Several.
Let me see if I can do that without losing it. Everything's in my way.
Thank you.
So Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. When I saw the revised plan, including grading going onto the neighboring property on 24 Old New England Road, I was a bit concerned because, as mentioned, 24 Old New England Road is currently under development right now. There's an inland wetland permit that's been issued for a single family residence. So it's my understanding that the proposed number 24 contours are from the approved site plan for 24. And this is how this grades from this site will tie into that. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically right where we show the silt fence line, we've adjusted there. We had some common points that we were able to adjust their grades to match ours. So basically right here is the common connection point, and it only goes up to, as you can see, it tapers off. It gets a little farther as you get back here, but that is, the grades have been put together so they're both on the same datums. The other thing we were doing is we have the stones along the wetland as the boundary. Within the area that's cleared, as they're doing it, they'll put them there with the machine that they're using to install the house or whatever. But in the other areas where it's going to remain natural, the homeowner said they will, if they'll put big enough stones that they can move by hand or, with a wheelbarrow or something small, there'll be no machines going into the undisturbed wetland buffer areas. So they're going to put them in here as they're putting the septic in around the house. But when it gets in these areas, that'll be put in by hand. There'll be no machines going through that area. In these slopes that we talked about also will be hydro seeded so they can be stabilized as quickly as possible, so they won't be left bare for too long. But other than that, it's pretty much similar to the plan from last week with those minor changes we put in.
This is Commissioner Basherman. Jamie, the letters that we got from the abutting property owners, do they reference any way the plan that they viewed to grant their approval?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So, so I don't think the grading has really changed on 28, but it did change on 24. So I did ask the owner of 24 to confirm that he saw the latest site plan, which he did. And also in my staff report, I do have a possible condition for the commission to consider requiring that a construction easement be granted. It can be a temporary one to make prior to start of site work, just to make sure there's no issue should 28 or 24 change hands and it's a new owner with achieving the proposed grading on the site plan.
Is that your number 4?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. Probably. I don't know if I can check without ruining the screen share.
Okay, yep, thank you.
One question I have, kind of following up on the placement of the boulders and equipment. I'm assuming you're going to need some sort of equipment to install the septic leach fields. What kind of equipment will that be, and how will it access along where the force main is proposed?
Actually, it's probably just gonna be a rubber tired machine, a backhoe. It's already been out through there. It's kind of to do the original test pits for the septic. It's gotten out there. It was able to snake between the trees.
Okay.
And so it won't do much damage at all, because I think there's already maybe a small trail that he's already put in through that section to get out there for the test pits.
Commission ready to move on to the conditions of approval?
Commissioner Begemon, just a question. Last month, we talked about how I think the staging process or the sequence of events was in the planting plan and not on the site plan, but it looks like, is it now all on the site plan?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, they have added a construction sequence to the site plan. Also, they have added some hay bales on the low side of the site in response to commission comments at the last meeting as well.
Great.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Bassman. Can you take us through the conditions of approval quickly? Thank you.
Let's see. All right, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Again, the first condition is standard conditions, standard inspections, which would be applicable, pre-construction meeting prior to clearing, erosion control inspection prior to earth disturbance, pre-planting meeting, post-planting meeting, final inspection upon site stabilization. Site plan should be revised to show the following prior to start work: erosion control blanket or comparable erosion and sedimentation control measure acceptable to the duly authorized agent shall be used on the steep slopes associated with the driveway grading to ensure timely stabilization. I know we got revised plans recently. Has that been added to the site plan, or is that still something that would need to be specified? Do you know, Nafis?
The erosion, I don't know, because that kind of came in at the last minute, but
Okay.
I stated on the record that they're going to do some hydro seeding and stuff on those slopes immediately to try to get the grass growing right away on that. And we could, we'll obviously have soil and erosion control on. We have it on around the perimeter of it on the downslope side. So
Right.
we'll keep that, and we'll, obviously. We want to put the curbing in on the driveway to keep water runoff. So hopefully we'll keep any water going down that slope to a minimal until the grass has a chance to establish itself.
Okay. Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, since I'm not 100% sure, I don't think that got added to the site plan, so I guess I'd recommend to keep it. Worst case scenario, if it did, I can just note that and it wouldn't be required because it would already be on file. 2 original signed and sealed paper copies of approved plans shall be submitted. So if the revisions required, then we would need that. A copy of a construction and maintenance easement or other mechanism acceptable to town council for the grading of the driveway and maintenance on 24 and 28 Old New England Road shall be submitted to the agency and approved by town council prior to start of any site work. The intent of this condition is to document the rights to construct the improvement and maintain it long term. 5, any disturbance / clearing associated with the force main installation between the 2 areas of disturbance shall be minimized to the extent feasible. Wetland flag should remain in place for the duration of the project. 7, I'm not sure about, and it was addressed, I think so. I don't know that it's overly necessary. Wetland delineation boundaries proposed beyond the limit of disturbance shall be placed by hand or by equipment located within the approved limits of disturbance. Deviation from the proposed boulder location and or spacing shown on the site plan shall be reviewed by the duly authorized agent. The duly authorized agent may approve the omission of boulder placement along wetland edge from wetland flags 1 through 6 and 24 through 30. The intent of that last sentence was to address the concern of creating more disturbance in an area that otherwise wouldn't be disturbed. However, it's being placed by hand, it shouldn't really cause too much disturbance. Number 8, plantings identified in the wetland upland review zone planting plan and details document prepared by soil resource consultants, last revised February 4th, 2022, which actually has now been revised again, so it'd be February 9th, 2022. Shall be monitored and report submitted by an initial growing season annually thereafter for 5 years, documenting at least 85% survival. I think this is kind of the threshold of where the commission generally would require a bond. If the commission is requiring a bond, should address whether it also should include erosion controls in addition to plantings and monitoring. Number 9, all disturbed areas within the approved limits of disturbance shall be stabilized with vegetation upon completion of final grades prior to removal of erosion controls. Number 10 is an as-built survey documenting compliance with the permit.
Commissioner Basserman. Jimmy, go back to 7. If you remove the first sentence, isn't the rest of it appropriate?
Remove the first sentence?
Yeah, we're basically, we already have on the record that they're going to be placed by hand.
I don't think it hurts to put it in writing either, though. That way, the contractor knows that as well, because the contractor's not here at the meeting.
Okay.
I think the commission might be more concerned with the last sentence and whether or not you're okay with me authorizing certain boulders not be placed if it would be more disturbance than not.
Commissioner Begeman, I thought last time we talked about a more permanent wetland flag in the form of a post that says wetland or something.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, that's one option, but I also asked the commission to consider whether boulders would be acceptable, since there are a lot on site and they're fairly large, so while they can be moved by hand, for the most part you wouldn't want to, and as they're going to have to move some by hand that are in the area that's not within the area of disturbance, the larger ones will be placed closer to the actual yard lawn type areas of the property, so they'd be less likely, I think, to be moved again.
Commissioner Baskerville, I certainly don't have any issue with that sentence, given the intent, which is to keep disturbance down to a minimum.
Okay.
So I guess now we're left just with the bond issue on the erosion controls.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Yeah, generally if you want a bond, and if so, whether it includes the erosion controls. Given the proximity of the activity to the wetland, I think it's consistent with your past practice to require a bond.
And it's consistent with the last application.
And we can, this is Commissioner Boda, and we can have the applicant submit with or an estimate for the bond, or submit the bond as part of a condition. We don't have to have that
Correct.
right now.
Yep, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Generally, the process that we've been using is that they submit the estimate prior to start of site work. I would review and approve it. If there's any disagreement between my number and their number, they can then come to the commission to see if the commission is agreeing with them. So it wouldn't necessarily have to come back to the commission either.
So are we otherwise ready to move?
Jamie, I have a question. I have the staff report, 3 pages, it says, but there's no mention of the normal standard conditions and general provisions.
Good catch. Thank you, Grinalch. Yes, I would also recommend that the standard conditions, I was wondering why the staff report was so short. I would recommend that the standard conditions and general provisions also apply to this permit.
This is Commissioner Bassman, and the only change then, I think, on the 3 pages of the staff report that you reviewed was changing the date on item 8 from February 4th to February 9th.
I believe that is correct. Let me just double check real quick. Yes, February 9th. And the changes were to change 85%, or they had 80% instead of 85%, and they had 3 years instead of 5 years, and they referenced North Branford instead of Branford. So that's basically the extent of the changes from the February 4th to the February 9th. They're just typos.
Important typos.
Yeah.
It seems.
Chairman, are you ready for a motion?
Please do.
Commissioner Grinalch, I make a motion that we approve IW 21.12.03 for work at 26, 24, and 28 Old New England Road, the construction of a new single-family home with the following conditions, starting on page 2 of 3 of the staff report, and continuing down with the change of the date from February 4th to February 9th, and also including the standard conditions and general provisions that we have in all permits. Those would be on the same, the last approval that we gave for Austin Ryer. I have a copy of those conditions from that report. I don't have a paper copy in front of me, but Jamie can, I don't know how, on the motion, I think, does that clarify the motion well enough?
Yeah, that should be fine.
This is Commissioner Boda, I'll second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Commissioner Boda?
Excuse me.
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Oh, hold on.
Can I modify my motion to indicate that we are including the erosion controls in the bond? I think that wasn't quite clear in the wording.
You made it clear, Commissioner Ganosh.
Now I did.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, can the second accept or
This is
say whether-
Commissioner Boda, I accept the amendment to the motion.
All right, roll call vote. Commissioner Boda?
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Ganosh?
Commissioner Ganal, aye.
Commissioner Begeman,
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Papatonis,
Commissioner Papatonis, aye.
Commissioner Fenaro,
Commissioner Fenaro, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Okay. Last application for review, inland wetland 220101, 2 Sandra Drive, replacing the ineffective broken drainage line and leveling the low spots along. Jamie? You're muted.
Sorry, I had to sneeze. Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. So there was a site walk on Monday. We had 2 commissioners out there, 3 commissioners actually. I also have some photos from that site walk. If you want, I can share that with the full commission since not everyone was able to make it out there on that lovely rainy day. So give me a minute and I will pull those up. We did also receive some revised sketches from the applicant in response to some of the commission's questions at the last meeting. And all right, so let me make sure I'm actually screen sharing. All right, so this is up by the driveway on the site, and I do also have a GIS map if the commission would like for me to share that as well.
What is this, a shoe commercial?
So I took this picture because part of the proposal is to put some crushed stone in low parts in the yard to provide some stability. So this is an example of that material that they're proposing to use.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Boda. What kind of stone is that? It's not asphalt millings, is it?
It's not asphalt millings. It's actually stone. I don't know what kind of stone.
Is it like trap rock?
It is. Yes, that's 3/4 inch trap rock.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All right. So as you can see, the site does hold some water. So this is on the right-hand side of the garage. It's one of the areas where the water comes through the site and it sits. Starting to look towards the back of the property. And this is the area where the drainage improvements have been completed. And I believe this is the approximate area of where the dry well outlets. Can you confirm if that's correct, Mr. Burr?
It's a little to your left, but yes, that's correct. That's
Okay,
actually just a random snow pile.
Okay. I think I have a better picture that might.
That's okay.
Right.
Yeah, so basically where that pile of tree branches is, it's in that region right there.
Okay. And is there a plan to remove those, or is a plan to leave those?
No, those will be removed when we can, when we get approved and we have permission to go back on site and the conditions are, conducive to work, we're going to remove those as well.
And is the intent to establish lawn over the dry well, or is it going to
The dry
have, like,
well,
crushed stone surface?
so I had discussed it with the homeowner to decide the best course of action of what really, not only just for feasible purposes, but more of aesthetic value. And we do believe that at some point we will be able to fill in that area with topsoil and then seed it as well. But as far as until that's feasible to do, we're going to leave it open as crushed stone with level up to the ground, the normal ground level of the rest of the yard. So it won't be a dip in the yard that poses a threat to someone's safety. It'll be level ground with everything else.
So that, I guess, is the approximate location of the dry well. And then you can kind of see in the background, they have a silt fence at the location of the limits of disturbance. It needs to be restapled and towed in. Has that work been completed or not yet?
Yes, it was completed yesterday.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So looking around the corner to the backyard, again, you can see the approximate limit of disturbance here and the activity in the yard. a closer look at the dry well area. And we do not have a wetland delineation for this site or the abutting site. We do have some wetland layers from state resources and federal resources, which show the approximate area of the wetland, but we do not have an actual wetland limit identifiable for the property. So the applicant is requesting that the requirement for a wetland scientist soil investigation to be waived. I'm not sure if there are wetlands on the subject property or not. There definitely are on the neighboring property. It looks like to me, at the very least, the wetland is approximately in this location right here, where you can see that it has kind of iced over and that there's standing water as well as over here. Again, looking out towards what I believe to be the wetland area, but we don't have any wetland delineations. And then wrapping around the edge of the project, I believe that the extent of the activity is kind of in line with the pool here and correcting the ruts that are on site. Is that correct, Chris, that the activity is approximately in line with the far edge of the pool and along the silt fence?
Yeah, so the project technically ends right where the pool begins. The rest of it is just the tracks of a machine that have to be raked out and then throw some seed on top of it when the conditions are right for that. But as far as the actual major project itself, it's cut off right at the pool and up to the berm that we created along the silt fence.
This is Commissioner Bassett. Jamie, what do our regulations say regarding the wetland delineation, the wetland report?
So as far as the wetland report, it is a requirement of the regulations. It says the following are also required unless otherwise determined by the agency or its a duly authorized agent. And number one is original soils report signed and sealed by soil scientist. And the commission obviously cannot make somebody delineate wetlands not on their property, but certainly the commission could require a wetland investigation for the subject property to confirm that there are or not wetlands on the property, if that's something the commission thought was appropriate for the project. I do believe that the activity, I mean, you can see the grass in the pictures. I do believe the activity is within what was a pre-existing lawn area. There is also section 4 of the regulations, which does speak to the rights to maintain residential property. There are certainly disclaimers and restrictions to that, though. Certainly enlarging lawn would not be considered maintaining. However, I don't know if the commission would consider maintaining pre-existing lawn and kind of filling in low spots, maintenance of residential property. And just to add for the commission, it's the intent to get rid of this berm area, I believe. Is that correct? That's a temporary measure.
Yeah, so the berm is a temporary measure for now. It will be removed as soon as the job is complete. Typically, we would do that before seeding happens, just so we don't do any damage to the seed or possibly take some of it away, in hopes to, regain a full, plush lawn again. So that would be removed as soon as the project is complete, before seeding is done. Along with all that garbage that you see that I have no idea where that came from, because that has nothing to do with our project.
Commissioner Bassman, Jamie, what would the downside be of not having a delineated wetland?
So I was not comfortable as the agent waiving the wetland delineation for this project, because I do believe the wetland is fairly close to where the activity is. I think one of the bigger downsides is the owner misses out on the information that they might get on what types of soils they have on site and what type of solutions might be most appropriate for the issues that they're having. Granted, that could also theoretically involve getting an engineer involved in the project as well. But a soil scientist could help point out some things that might be helpful to the project. I do understand that this is a new homeowner. They recently purchased the house and they're trying to make the yard usable. They do have some kids that, and they want to make the yard usable and safe for the kids. I don't know what the commission's thoughts are on it.
If I could interrupt, I mean, as Jamie just said, they're a new, they're basically a new family. They have 2 young children. They're working on a budget and clearly uncertain economic times. So if we keep compiling, and I understand that we have to, and we're willing to abide by whatever the commission decides, but I'm really leaning back towards the first meeting that we had where Commissioner Boda, who wasn't at the site walkthrough, had mentioned that she didn't feel it was necessary to have a soil scientist present on a property where you're working within an actual lawn surface. We're not extending any lawn. We're not making the lawn bigger. We're working within the confines of the actual lawn itself. There's no extension to this. There's no real addition. It's just to kind of correct a little bit of cosmetic flaws, as you can see, because this is not usable property.
Commissioner Granolch, I don't think a soil report is necessary from what I can see. I think we're certainly not in the wetlands, and even if there was a soil report that showed a little bit of wetlands on the site, we're still far enough away from that I don't think it would affect what we're trying to approve here.
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. I don't think it would be out of place at all for the commission to waive it given the level of activity. What is being proposed at this time is pretty minor. And I've had a discussion with the property owners that if they want to do something more involved down the road, that they should reach out to this agency to see if a wetland permit would be required. There is a bit of a distance between the activity and the wetland, and it does kind of go up slightly. I mean, it could be overtopped in a really large storm, but it's not a completely down gradient slope to the wetland area. Obviously, the erosion controls in this picture are not ideal, but you can also still see that while they're certainly should be functioning, there haven't really been any issues with transport.
I don't know. If I might add one more thing, the reason that we're attempting to press the matter of getting this project done sooner rather than later is that we fear, especially because the springtime is notably a more rainy time. There's a lot more moisture in the ground. There's a lot more precipitation and chances for groundwater to not absorb and just to sit stagnant on the yard. So we're trying to get this done in the winter time, the majority of this project, before we can plant grass seed, because you can't do that until the conditions are right for that. So we're almost on a time crunch, but I'm not trying to pressure anybody. I'm not leveling it that way. I'm just saying the reason that we chose to do this project now is because we believe wholeheartedly that this is the right time to do it, as opposed to attempting to do this in the springtime or having to push this off until the summertime. Not only that, but it's an eyesore for everyone. And we just want these new homeowners to move into their house, which happens in roughly 2 to 3 weeks, to be able to move into their own new home and look at their yard and know that there's some improvement done and it doesn't look like an active construction site.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Commissioner Boda, is there anything that you've seen tonight that would change your prior opinion?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think no, with the caveat that were this to be approved without the need for a wetland delineation, that it be made very clear in the motion some of the factors around that decision, as it's not necessarily, you know, I think it's more common for us to include a soils report from a soil scientist. And I think anytime we deviate from our standard practice, it's important to specify why for the record so that we can continue to be fair and uniform.
Fair enough.
This Commissioner Begemon, has that dry well has not been dug yet, correct?
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent, I believe that it has, and that it's essentially complete at this point.
The dry well was pre-existing. The only thing that we did was we extended it slightly, a little bit further into the yard, not away towards the woods line. It was a pre-existing dry well that we had found because it was clearly noticeable that water was sitting right there. And if you had dug even 2 inches down into the ground, you would find that someone had put, whether it be asphalt millings or some sort of trap rock, every shovelful was just full of some kind of sediment, that whether it be, like I said, trap rock, asphalt millings, or some garbage, to be honest with you. So it had been previously attempted, clearly to no avail, because we wouldn't be doing this project right now if the previous attempts had worked. So the only thing that we did was that we extended it further into their yard as opposed to further towards the property line.
Commissioner Begemon, I just, you know, looking at that ground saturated with water, I can't imagine that a dry well is dry. But I'm not an engineer. That would be my concern with this.
So realistically, again, not only is that section had some saturation issues, there were areas close to the garage where the fountain drain was placed around the foundation. So there was pooling water in one section. So that was our first area of concern. If you dug down, again, about 4 to 6 inches roughly, the pipe itself crumbled in your hands. So, and it discharged right next to the foundation. So someone, to some effect, didn't do their job appropriately when that was originally put in. So our idea was we would leave that drain in place because that entails a much larger project. The other area of concern was a little bit further on the right side of the house, which you saw in one of the very first pictures after we did a foot commercial. To the right was all that moisture buildup right there. We believe that's all runoff related due to the fact that they're kind of at the bottom of the bowl there. The last area of concern was that back far corner of the property where the dry well was already pre-existing. What we're trying to do is create a firm base throughout the whole yard, not just that one spot. And we just traced the lines of the original drainage lines. We didn't change any, there's no topographical changes being made in that regard. It's more so of just attempting to mirror the previous projects, but do it correctly this time. Because we had noticed even, I mean, granted, you're going off of those pictures, which are pretty not pleasant looking, but that's over 14 inches of snowpack and 2 inches of rain being melted almost within 2 or 3 days prior to that. And whether you have grass in your lawn or not, you're going to have standing water to some degree. So our whole goal is that that side of the property needs to just have a firm base on it, and then hopefully having that firm base, because we're not trying to change, the water is going to flow wherever the water is going to flow, and we're not trying to change the pitch of the yard. We're just trying to get it so the yard is usable and has firm ground. And we believe the best course of action is using the 3/4 inch trap rock as a base layer to then put topsoil on top, on compounding with the existing drainage path that we repaired with the enhanced dry well, which according to that picture is not very dry at this point. But we do have faith that that will dry up very quickly, especially when temperatures continue to rise and the water table tends to recede. So that's our end goal.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, if the commission wants, I can share the revised sketches that we received. Looks like so Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, here's the first photo or first map showing the house, and this is the federal
Fish and Wildlife.
Fish and Wildlife Service wetland layer. So it's a very large, broad scale estimate of where the wetland location is. Here is the approximate location of the stormwater system and the approximate location of the dry well. And you can see that this area has been lawn in the back. And it certainly looks like at least times of the year it can be dry. This sketch might just be a little bit confusing, but basically what is being shown here is the approximate property boundaries per the town GIS, which is not always very accurate. So then here's the town GIS system with the approximate location of where the activity is occurring, I believe. That's what this is showing, correct? The location of where you're filling in low spots.
Mm-hmm.
This image shows approximate distance of pre-existing dry well to the beginning of the protected wetlands. Approximate measurement between waypoint 1 located within existing lawn area to waypoint 2 is 124 feet. I think it might be a little bit closer if you're to measure over here, but it's still a decent distance. Again, same concept. This shows distance between area of highest disturbance, waypoint 1, to beginning of wetlands, waypoint 2. Level of disturbance includes 1 layer of crushed stone, 2 to 3 inch layer of topsoil and grass seed. Total measurement between waypoint 1 and waypoint 2 is 100 feet. This image shows area of limited disturbance, planting new grass in spring 2022 in comparison to the beginning of protected wetlands. The approximate measure between waypoint 1 and waypoint 2 is about 50 feet. And I believe that's it. And we did also get dimensions estimating the area, which relates back to the initial estimated area that we received as part of the application information. I do have a staff report prepared if the commission wants to take a look at that. And we do also have a narrative describing the crushed stone topsoil activity that is being proposed.
This is Commissioner Bassett with Jamie. Yeah, why don't you run through the conditions of approval? And I guess we'll need to, it looks like if we're going to waive the requirement for a soils report to Commissioner Boda's request, we need to then fabricate, I guess, a new item in those conditions for consideration regarding the rationale for the waiver.
I don't know that it needs to be a condition of approval, but it could be like a finding that the commission makes as part of the process. I do think it is a good practice to state on the record why the commission is waiving it, especially since there are certainly circumstances given the same distance where the commission wouldn't. So to go through the conditions real quick, standard conditions, initial erosion control inspection and final inspection. I would want to have an erosion control inspection just to confirm the erosion controls have been properly repaired prior to restarting work. Number 2, work should be completed during a period of dry conditions to the extent possible to help prevent formation of future divots and low spots. current / pre-existing surface drainage patterns should be maintained, or additional information submitted for review and approval by the commission. All disturbed areas within the silt fence shall be stabilized with vegetation. If work is completed prior to the appropriate time for seeding, straw or non-seed bearing hay shall be spread to prevent soil transport until lawn can be established. No activity shall occur beyond the silt fence. And then number 6, no planting plan has been provided for review, but reference is made in the project narrative that plantings may assist in water management goals. If permit holder wants to add a planting plan within the approved limits of disturbance, such plan may be reviewed by the inland wetland agent. No plants on the Connecticut invasive plants list shall be planted. Contact the inland wetland office for additional resources and to find out if additional approvals are necessary. So my thought behind that last condition is it's they want to add plants, that's not going to involve a significant like regrading or anything like that, like adding a swale. It seems like that would be a benefit to the wetland, and it doesn't necessarily need to come back to the commission, but staff might be able to help them ensure that they're planting appropriate plants for the area, and it might help with some of the water management goals they have for the site. And then I believe there should be, yes, standard conditions and general provisions of all permits.
Got them this time.
If you go back to the conditions for approval, wouldn't we add one that says a planting, a soils report is not required?
That wouldn't be a condition of approval. That's more of a finding. I think it could be a statement with the motion, as Commissioner Boda was saying. I don't think it has to be a condition of approval though, because the commission essentially is waiving it before they make a decision. They're saying that it's not required, so it's not.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep.
I think it's Commissioner Boda's turn to make a motion. And she so nicely worded why we are excusing the soil report. Maybe she would like to make the motion. I'd be glad to second it, but
All right, so this is Commissioner Boda. I'm going to make a motion on inland wetland 22.01.01 to Sandra Drive. At this time, the commission, based on the information from that was already available to the town, and that the property owners are doing work on existing lawn and not encroaching toward, sorry, I'm gonna ask a question. What was the name of that map? Just need a word. Yes.
National Fish and Wildlife, or the GIS?
Fish and
The
Wildlife.
national, oh yeah, the National Fish and Wildlife map and the town GIS, that we can make a determination of the wetlands based on those maps. And since there is not, they're not disturbing additional soil, that we can grant a permit with the conditions that are outlined in the staff report, as well as the standard conditions and the general provisions in the issuance of all permits.
Commissioner Greenwald, second.
Any discussions on that motion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Boda,
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Granalsh,
Commissioner Greenwald, aye.
Commissioner Begeman,
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Finaro,
Commissioner Finaro, aye.
Commissioner Papatonis,
Commissioner Papatonis, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Thank you. Good luck. Got a lot of water there.
Yeah, thank you very much. So just out of curiosity, so the next step from here, so we're approved to work and we just have to meet So I'll have Jamie come out and look at the erosion controls before we start again, so we're in line with the conditions. Is there a physical piece of paper that I need to pick up from the town, or are we just?
Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, we will send out a permit. We'll send it via email and a paper copy. So don't start work until you get that. And also until I've done the inspection.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, guys.
You're welcome. Take care.
Take care.
All right, we're into the enforcement section now. We have a notice of violation on Island View condominiums. Drainage maintenance required. I think we heard this before. Jamie, you want to tell us what's new?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. This is the notice of violation that was issued, which resulted in our first application for a review this evening. I think at this point, now that the permit's been issued, we can probably take this off of the agenda. I don't foresee any issues with continued compliance with the item.
Great.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Boda. Should we wait to lift?
It's just a notice of violation, so it's not a cease and correct order. I think we can just take it off. And if for whatever reason they don't follow through with implementing the permit, then it would be another follow-up.
Notice of violation 113 Flax Mill Road. Placement of wood chips within the upland review area resulting from the removal of storm damaged trees.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So the property owner was present at the last meeting, and the commission did start to review this. The commission did request that a soils scientist conduct an investigation. Primarily, I believe the concern was regarding whether the wood chips would have any direct wetland impact through flotation or other concerns. I believe that the homeowner is present and that they're requesting that the commission reconsider that requirement. I said that they could request that of the commission. I certainly can't make that decision. And I suggested that the commission could possibly consider doing a site walk and or having me do a follow-up investigation now that we have gotten some rain events since the activity occurred. I think that there's been a bit of history with this site. Obviously, it's the second violation. I think if the commission were to waive the soil scientist investigation requirement, it would be good to make it clear that that might be a requirement before any additional activity occurs, just so that way everyone knows where the wetlands are. And I know the homeowner was also interested in having a discussion as to what was regulated as far as tree cutting, as far as I believe he has a wood stove. So, I mean, that information is necessary really for the commission to give any sort of feedback on that front. But I also understand that they have some concerns with doing the soil investigation at this time. So I believe with that being said, if the property owner wants to say their bit on it.
Hi, yes. This is Maisie Christian, 113 Flax Mill Road. I just want to address first the repeat violation. We were not given the information after our first violation that stated what we were allowed or not allowed to do. So, and I know part of our first violation, one of the ways to help fix the problem and to do erosion controls was to include wood chips. So wood chipping of fallen trees was something that was not, to our knowledge, not allowed. But we do fully understand that if we were to touch anything, whether it's down or live in our backyard, that we do need permission. So I just wanted you to know that we fully understand there will be no more actions taking place there without touching base with you first. And yes, we're concerned about the prices. We did reach out to a couple different soil scientists in our area, and their fees would be financially difficult for us at this time. I'm expecting another child. I will be out of work soon. And so the fees are not cheap. So I know that you had said that maybe we could do another option. I know you've already been to the property and you have pictures to show. So I'm not so sure if like another site walk is totally necessary. Just knowing a little bit about me too. Because of my pregnancy, I am trying to keep interactions with others to a minimum. So if you don't have to come out, then that's okay. But if you do, I understand that as well. So I don't know if you wanted to go through the pictures again and decide if what you saw was enough. No additional action has been taken back there. It was not a project that we were doing. It was a 1 couple hour thing, just chipping some down trees. So you can say what you think about next.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So just to recap for the commission, there were some trees that fell during the storm events from the previous summer, and they had rented a wood chipper to clean up some of that wood. And also there's some stored sections of wood that they plan on processing for heat, which we already went over at the last meeting. So I can pull up those photos. And I also just want to follow up that I did review the materials from the first violation, which was clearing and grading, and it was not really made clear about removal of fallen trees and whether or not that was a regulated activity. I have since shared.
Jamie, what was the date of that first violation?
I want to say 2017, but
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So here are photos from when I went out back in December. So the reason for possibly doing a follow-up inspection is because from what I recall at the last meeting, one of the biggest concerns was flow transport of the wood chip. So if there was a follow-up inspection completed, I could see if it looks like it's still in the same condition. I would certainly be more than happy to wear a mask, and it's obviously outside and socially distanced. And I don't know if the commission wants to be part of that site walk or not, because you didn't see it the first time. However, if that's something that you would be interested in seeing to see if you were comfortable with waiving the soil scientist report, then I think it wouldn't be uncalled for. So again, you can see that the trees were uprooted. They weren't just randomly cut down. And then this is some of the wood that I believe that they wanted to use for heat purposes. And I had already had a conversation with them about thinning out the wood chips in a couple small piles that they have, but for the most part, I think the wood chips are thin enough that they shouldn't cause too much of an issue, and they should be fine.
Where do we suspect the wetland, this is Commissioner Basser, where do we suspect the wetland is, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I believe the wetland is behind this cut stump. I'm not sure how close, but behind where all this cut tree sections are, I believe is where the wetland is. So let me see real quick. So this is the subject house right here, and the area where the activity occurred is approximately in this location here. So this is the state GI wetland layer, which is very approximate again. It's broad estimate done to give general idea of wetlands are. And then the purple lines are wetland delineations that have been completed, where soil scientists actually went out and did a wetland delineation. So there's definitely a wetland right here, but I'm not even sure if the wetland is on their subject property here. But I still think that's very helpful for all parties to know. And certainly it's still within the 100-foot upland review area. So it's still within the jurisdiction of the commission. There's also a wetland to the southeast on 85 Flax Mill, and we don't have the backside of that wetland, which oftentimes indicates it goes off of the subject property, but not always. So again, definitely some activity could be within 100 feet of this wetland. even if the wetland did end, say, at the property line. So that being said, I don't think the activity was in a wetland. It was trees that had been knocked over during a storm. My biggest concern personally is any future activity and making sure that the site doesn't slowly become cleared over time, or that direct wetland impacts don't occur down the line. So
This is Maisie Christian, just speaking for the homeowner. There's no plans to further clear cut any of the land. But again, just as I stated before, if there were to be any kind of cutting or removal of down fallen trees, we would make sure to contact the Inland Wetland Association. I understand, and my husband fully understands, that if we were to want to do more things on our property, because we are outdoorsy and do enjoy using the property that we have, that a soil scientist or soil sample would be the next appropriate step, so that we actually do know what we may be touching. So, I mean, that's kind of what I want to propose, is that if we were to want to do something else, I think that's totally appropriate to want to include the soil scientist and get that done. But there are no plans at this point to do anything else without your full permission.
As Commissioner Basserman, understand that the concern also is, a change of ownership, and the new party may not have the same attitude that you just expressed.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I don't know that that's, I don't know. I guess I would be less hesitant about that kind of concern than actual impacts from the activity that occurred. I mean, new property owners should do due diligence, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I've had new property owners on newly developed lots with wetland delineations on the site plan say, oh, I had no idea there were wetlands on my property. So I think to require a soil scientist so that future property owners are aware that there are wetlands on the property might be optimistic.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Jamie, did you basically say that the activity did not occur in the wetland, but did occur within the 100-foot most likely?
I believe the activities in the upland review area and not in a wetland. I didn't do any soil samples. I didn't take out the hand auger or anything like that. But to me, it seemed like I was in an upland area when I reviewed the condition.
This is Commissioner Papantonis, but we're looking at this because we're concerned as to what's going to happen with the wood chips vis-a-vis the wetlands, correct?
So the concern would be impact to the wetland from the activity that has occurred.
And, Commissioner Papantonis again, have we actually been, the commission, because I don't remember ever going to this property, but it could be before I joined the commission. Have we ever actually been for a site walk on this property?
The commission held a site walk for the initial violation back in 2017. A site walk has not been held by the commission for the recent activity that has occurred. I went out in December and I took the photos, which I just shared with the commission. But the commission has not been out to see the recent activity.
All right, so again, Commissioner Papantonis, so if we rule on this without either a site walk or a soil, having a soil scientist go out, then we're kind of shooting in the dark, right?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I think, like I said, I think that the commission may benefit from doing a site walk, so that way you can make a decision based on actual site information. At the very least, I would think the commission would want for me to go back out and confirm that there's been no change in circumstances from when I was out there before. As far as any prolonged impacts from the activity to the wetland area.
This is Commissioner Begman. I feel comfortable having our agent, Jamie Frederick, go out there. It sounds like wasn't done on the wetlands. And as long as Jamie is comfortable with knowing what's happening with those wood chips, I'm good with that.
Commissioner Reynolds, I agree with Commissioner Redmond.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Does anybody disagree with Commissioner Begeman's proposal? Okay.
I might suggest that if the commission, or never mind. So does the commission, if that's the case, does the commission want me to report back afterwards, or only if I find the conditions unsatisfactory?
This is Commissioner Frederick. I think it would make sense for you to come back with just a report on what you see, if the wood chips have or have not mobilized, so that we can make the determination. We don't, I think we don't want to ask Jamie to do something that's our task. And so she can go and gather the data that we need, and then we can make the determination.
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Jamie, you'll contact us about a time where you can come?
Yeah, I'll contact you tomorrow and we can set up a time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Last enforcement action, notice of violation, 11 Pound View Terrace. Placement of wood chips within the upland review area resulting from the removal of storm damaged trees within the conservation easement.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So I became aware of this activity a little while ago, and I've reached out to the property owner and I've met with him on the site to discuss the activity. Let me start off by pulling up a GIS map. All right. So the subject property is 11 Pine View Terrace, and along the back there's a strip of property owned by the Branford Land Trust, and then this wetland area over here is owned by the state. There is a 100-foot conservation area, I believe, from the far side of the land trust property. So it's not entirely on the subject property, but there's a conservation deed restriction on the back portion of this property here. Again, the storm event we had the previous summer where we had those two back-to-back storms, there was some tree damage, and the property owner had some trees removed. And I believe some wood chips from that process ended up kind of in this back area here along the rear property line and on the land trust property. So my main concern at this point is making sure that the property owner's already been out and raked the wood chips so that they're thinner and can decompose. There's a couple areas where I went out and talked with him about pulling them away from the base of the trees more to help ensure that the trees remain healthy. And then the other concern I had is the fact that some of the trees were removed in a conservation restriction area, which does make this a little bit different than some of the other ones we've seen. The conservation restriction is kind of vague in its language. The property owner has been responsive and is, I believe, present this evening to answer any questions. So here are some photos of the wood chips. And as you can see, like this tree right here, you can't really see the root flare, which is not the healthiest condition. It promotes holding water at the base of the tree, which can promote rot. and kind of over in this area as well. When I went out on the site walk, it was a little bit frozen. I think doing this work when things thaw out should be sufficient, but should be done. And I believe that the property owner has also been in contact with the land trust. So this area right here where it's looks like lawn is within the conservation restriction area. And I wasn't sure what the commission's response to that would be, as it is a conservation restriction area. It is also a stable area. So the whole neighborhood has, well, not the whole neighborhood, but many properties in the neighborhood have conservation restriction areas. So obviously we don't want this to happen everywhere. I believe that the property owner is open to the idea of planting some things in there. And I don't want to overspeak for the property owner. So the one last thing I'm going to pull up before we can hand it over is a copy of the subdivision plan. Assuming it'll load up. So this is the subject property here. Here is the land trust property, and the wetland is here. And this is the conservation area right in here. So it looks like this is the 50-foot setback. So it's probably about 70 feet onto the subject property. And it states, note, within the conservation easement restriction area, there shall be no cutting of trees or other regulated activity as defined by the regulations of the Inland Wetland Commission unless approval is granted by the Inland Wetland Commission of the town of Branford. The conservation easement restriction area consists of that area denoted on the map, comprising the wetlands, watercourses, and 50-foot upland review area. This conservation easement / restriction shall be referenced on all deeds of conveyance for individual lots affected within the subdivision. So unless the commission has any questions before I hand it over to the property owner for any comments he has.
Commissioner Bassam, I just, as a result of the activity, are any of the wetlands in danger?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. So I think a good amount of work has been done to thin the wood chips. I don't think that there's any prolonged concerns for the wetland beyond, like I was saying, removing some of the wood chips against the base of the trees to help make sure that the remaining trees survive and that there's not further thinning of the remaining trees. So I think with the conservation easement area, certainly it should kind of resemble more of a natural state than it currently does. I wasn't sure how to direct the property owner on resulting that. So 1 minute, let me pull up the letter that was sent. All right, so therefore you're requested to take the following actions to resolve the violation: cease any further yard waste disposal within the conservation deed restriction area, which the property owner has stated he will do, and he will make sure that any landscapers or contractors working on his property are aware of. Attend the regularly scheduled meeting of the Inland Wetland Watercourse Commission January 13th to discuss, which he requested to table it to the February, which we're discussing now. Activity that has occurred within the conservation easement area, any restoration activities that may be required, such as removing wood chips from base of trees and possibly planting requirements, and status of the conservation easement area.
I think it's a good time now to hear from the homeowner.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Scott Penner. My wife, Nicole, and I have lived here for, I think, 9 years almost. and we've never cut anything down. This is a one-time thing. We were kind of smack in the middle of the tornado. There are trees that come down out there, here and there because of, in like the hurricanes or the bigger storms, but never like that. Our neighborhood was ravaged. So, I'm sure you guys know, the tops of the trees were like all hanging off, and it was just kind of a disaster. And our neighborhood, our street, like the whole area seemed to have like wood cutting guys out here like every day for like months and months. So, they were here in the neighborhood, and we were like, can you clean this? We have 6 kids. They're younger, and they were, always playing out there. So we felt it was really unsafe. So they did that. They did put too many wood chips in one area. And the problem was, they were kind of piled up, and that was never the plan. But, they had done it, and there's nothing I could do about it at that point. So we pulled a bunch of them. Me and a few people, raked them out to be as thin as we could, as thin as we thought we could get them. And, obviously this isn't something that'll ever recur. We love the trees. We love the neighborhood. We love everything about it. Our kids play back there and stuff like that. So, we're happy to do anything that you guys feel is appropriate. We're certainly not interested in creating a problem at all. So.
Thank you.
At this point, I definitely am going to, because I don't want any more trees to fall, obviously. So we're going to be pulling back the wood chips anyway from the base of the trees. Jamie and I spoke about that. She explained that was kind of a risky situation for the trees. So we're going to do that anyway in the spring. That's a given just because we want to. But as far as like anything else you want us to do, it's really, it looks really nice and natural back there. And, I think generally everybody's happy with it, but any other ideas or things you want to require are fine.
Just Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, do you have concerns other than the easement area?
Other than the easement area, I would say no. There was some recent permit approvals for the site. They did have a pool and an associated structure built. Those were just outside the 100-foot review area, and that works all stable. It's fine. It's just the wood chips and the fact that there's a lawn area essentially within the conservation restriction area. So I don't know if the commission would be looking to have that restored to maybe like a meadow or restored with like shrubby vegetation, woody vegetation. It is stabilized right now, which is nice, but it's not really a natural condition.
Right.
And I don't know.
How big is the area that we're talking about here? The easement area?
Well, the easement is probably 70 feet by, it looks like from the map, about 185 feet, if I'm reading that right. But
it's not the whole width either, though.
It's not the whole width, right? We're probably talking about a third of it, maybe, or even less. I don't know. Like, it's just kind of the middle portion. That was the area that got hit pretty hard.
I think it would be approximately this area in here.
Yeah, like the middle-ish third, I would say, of the 70 feet.
And I think the conservation restriction area goes approximately somewhere in here.
This is Commissioner Bassman. The easement was there, I assume, for some kind of protection.
It was part of the subdivision approval.
Okay. And we lost that.
Well, it's not in the condition that
it
would be expected to be in.
Right. So it seems to me the return to something along the lines of what the original intent was, should be where our head is at here.
So as far as that plan,
I mean, the trees came down in the storm, so they were all dead. I mean, that wasn't me, you know, just so we're clear. We got smashed, yeah. So I only took down the trees that were, you know, hanging and dead.
Right, but it's that area that is now lawn, that is different in its condition than what was part of the approval of the subdivision.
Well, I didn't exactly know what to do because it was muddy and, you know, gross, and it was winter, and, you know, so we just planted, because you know, what else? I didn't know what to do except I didn't want a big mud disaster back there, you know, so there's nothing fancy about it. I literally just spread a bunch of seed to get something growing there. I even put wildflowers, but they didn't really take. So, I mean, it wasn't like, it was just sort of something I figured something had to be planted there, you know, because it was kind of just a disaster.
Jamie, do you have a recommendation? Go ahead.
This is Commissioner Boda. I think that there are multiple ways to go about this. I think that the long and short of it is that that area, part of the approval process for that lot is that a section of it is required to be a conservation area, meaning that it's specifically not maintained as lawn. That's why that easement is there. So to get back to that conservation status, it could be letting it grow back in. It could be going to keeping it more as a meadow that which also provides its own conservation benefits. It could be replanting it to kind of match the other forested area. Typically, the commission does not create applications or plans. What we do is we look at what the homeowner proposes, and you can talk to Jamie about what some of the options might be. There are some private companies that can also give you some guidance on what planting a conservation area might look like. So there's more than one way forward. I think ultimately what the commission would look for is that it's return to a natural state, which is not a maintained lawn. So that's where my thinking is. I don't know that it has to look like the adjacent forest or wooded area. I mean, I think that there's definitely benefit to meadow if it's already an open area. But I think what I would be looking for is a proposal for some kind of conservation area in a natural state.
So I mean, I'm okay just leaving it. I don't, you know, again, the storm took the trees down. So to me, I mean, I don't know I mean, I can just leave it. I could have left it, the dirt too, you know, and I just don't know, you know, how do I go about finding out what those options are? Because I don't want to incur a bunch of expense to
and you also
stuff. I didn't really, you know, it's not like I just went and randomly took down a bunch of trees. You know?
No, and you also, the other thing that you don't want with a space like that, you tend to get invasives that will be the first thing to try to repopulate that area, and you definitely don't want those. And so
yeah, they're very prevalent there.
Yeah, so there's definitely some resources that, you know, Jamie can point you to. UConn has some helpful information. There's a couple of private companies that like all Habitat, or, you know, there's a number of resources that are available to you. And then from that menu of resources, you can really decide, all right, I understand what this information is telling me. I'm going to make a plan myself. I'm going to bring it to the commission, or I'm feeling like I'm over my head. I need some guidance from somebody. They're just going to help you construct a plan, and then you do it yourself, all the way to, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. I'm going to pay somebody to figure out the plan and help me implement it. There's everything in between. So
what do I have to do? Because to me, it's like, if I'm supposed to conserve it and the storm took down all the trees, what, do I then have, what's that? Yeah, like what's my obligation? Because for me to do something affirmatively to create conservation land doesn't make much sense to me, to be perfectly honest. And I'm not trying to be argumentative at all.
sure. No, well, I think
If I'm supposed to
part of it is
conserve
like
it, I'm not supposed to leave trees hanging for my kids to fall on my kids, right? So like,
no, certainly not. But one of the things that comes up with those conservation issues is certainly that cuts can be made for human safety. Part of the issue is notifying the wetland office so that Jamie and our staff can go out and provide guidance, because what we don't, especially in a conservation area, and just for a moment, if you can imagine, the wetland agency receives dozens and dozens of permits, and this one was in 2000, so we see lots of these kind of things, and we always often will put conservation easements, because what we find is that over time the limit of the backyard goes closer and closer and closer and closer to the wetland right on top of it. So in the case of wind damage and stuff like that, you just need to touch base with the office, and then our staff can provide guidance on like, what do I do with these limbs that are hanging? Can I cut these? And then you would get guidance. The issue is like, when we look at those pictures, it looks like maintained lawn, and that's specifically what's outside of what was permitted for that area. And so it may not be a huge undertaking, but as the property owner, it's your responsibility then to make sure that the property is as it was permitted to be and not beyond. And so your next steps would be to set a time with Jamie, and she can help point you to some resources. Like I said, it might be that she points you to the UConn website. You take a look at it. You're like, oh, okay, I see what I can do. And she can kind of talk you through it, she and Abby. It may be that like you look at it and you say, all right, I want to talk to a consultant, and I'm going to pay them a little bit of money, and they're going to help me think about it, and we're going to come up with a plan. And then whatever it is that you end up doing, you would bring back to the commission.
So again, I'm not quite following. I agree, and I understand. Jamie did explain that I should have requested permission to take down the hanging trees, but this is like an unprecedented. A tornado directly hit my neighborhood. I mean, directly. Like, that doesn't happen. And I had an opportunity with tree people in every other person's yard here, and they came over and said, "Do you want us to take care of those?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then they were gone. And now I have some obligation and I put seed down just so it didn't like wash away, which I don't think you guys wanted either, washing it into the wetlands that are below that. So I tried to do the right thing, and now I'm under some obligation to create a conservation area. I mean,
so
Mother Nature did this, right? I didn't do it. So
Commissioner Bosserman, the easement was there when you purchased the property. The tornado didn't create that. You didn't create that. That was there.
The tornado created the situation where there weren't trees.
So, Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Age, I think that the issue is the fact that you weren't aware that you should contact us at the time when it happened, and or you were in panic mode because you had extreme damage in your backyard. You have kids. You were concerned for their safety, which is understandable. But really, I mean, if you had cut down the hangers and left them where they are, that's the ideal treatment for a conservation easement area. Further activity can occur to an extent, but that should be reviewed by the commission up front. So the concern is the fact that not only were these trees cut, but they also were stump ground, and now it's a lawn area. So if we were to say,
sorry,
I think just trying to, I think the commission understands that this was not intentional. And that you did try to stabilize, and you did stabilize the area, and I think they respect that. But they also have to respect the fact that there's a conservation restriction easement and apply it fairly and uniformly across the town. So they're just looking to have a plan that puts it back into a more natural passive state that can be considered a conservation restriction type.
I mean, it's a forest. It's a forest, and
it's just
I'll leave it alone. I won't mow it or touch it or whatever. I mean, I just it's kind of absurd to me that given that a tornado came in, you wanted me to leave 8 or 10 feet of stumps with no tops, all the trees that were smashed in half. Like that would make no sense to me. Nobody else did that in my neighborhood. It was, it seems like we're really nitpicking here. If you guys want me to leave it and just let it grow to forest or whatever happens, I'm fine with that. I won't touch it. I have no need for that area. I only did it so it didn't look like a complete disaster. I really don't want to incur expense and time and effort. I'm really busy. I don't want to do that to create a conservation area where, Mother Nature has already created a it's like, I'll leave it. I'll let trees grow wherever they grow. I don't care. I got no problem.
This is Commissioner Papantonis speaking. I don't think you understand. There's two different issues here that we're talking about, right? Because the tree, there's the tree work, and then there's the fact that there's a conservation easement, and that there's basically lawn encroaching on the easement. And legally, we don't have really a whole lot of say over, we can't just tell you don't have an easement anymore. The easement's there, it's recorded. And you as a homeowner, as a landowner, have an obligation to maintain the easement. We can't just say it's not there anymore.
But I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm suggesting there's nothing in the recorded document or anything that suggests that I have an affirmative obligation to create a conservation area. All it says is that I can't. So if you guys want to pay for cutting trees down after a tornado that probably never happened in Branford before, then I guess so be it. And I understand the issue there, and I should have requested permission. I really didn't know that was the process. I've never gone before the Wetlands Commission. I've never been involved with anything with wetlands, so I didn't know.
But you see, you don't understand, because the easement, we're not creating the easement, and we're not asking you to create it. The easement is there and it's recorded in the land records.
I'm not suggesting you're saying create the easement. I'm saying you're suggesting that I have to affirmatively create a conservation area, not an easement. Not an easement. The easement exists, but the easement says is I can't take affirmative action to not have it be a conservation area, which I did, right? But only to protect my kids largely, right? And make it look not like an unnatural area, right? With a bunch of half taken down trees. So I'm just curious as to how I could be held accountable for recreating what Mother Nature destroyed. Like that's the part that doesn't make sense to me. Like I didn't do that, right?
I think perhaps the path of least resistance is the commission seems open to the concept of a meadow, and that can pretty much be established through minimizing the maintenance of that area that's been disturbed, but you would still want to cut it once or twice a year to help prevent the establishment of invasive species. You could consider whether or not you want to throw in some native wildflower type seed mix again, because you mentioned you had tried to do that previously. So what I can do is I can give you some resources about establishing meadows, and maybe you can come back or submit to the commission a plan to establish kind of a passive meadow back there, which would be probably the least involved activity, the least expense on your part. and would allow the commission to not be put in a position where they feel like they're treating you differently than other people that have conservation deed restrictions on their property.
I'm okay with that. And even if you want me to plant a few trees, I don't want to go through, and I'm sorry if I'm getting frustrated, I'm not trying to. It's been a little bit of a pain, the whole process. And I just didn't want to go through, anything, substantial to do. I'll plant trees if you want, a few trees back there and let it be a meadow, and I'll plant wildflowers, whatever you guys want. I just don't want to have to go research something, come back to another meeting. With all due respect, I sat here for like 2 hours before I even went. And it just, if we can avoid that, that's what I'm hoping to do.
We'll take particular concern on the next agenda and the placement of this item.
So Jamie Frederick, in the Wetland Agent. So is the commission asking for that plan to be available for review at the March meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Am I coming up with the
Yeah, so why don't you reach out to Jamie? Jamie and Abby can very much help you. It doesn't have to be a super cumbersome process. It is important for everyone involved that, we are as fair and as uniform as we can be. We understand the situation that you're in. And I think that in the end, everybody will be okay with how it works out. But so talk to Jamie. I think that it won't be perhaps as cumbersome as you're thinking right now in this moment of frustration.
Okay. Thank you, guys. I'm sorry for getting frustrated.
If we don't touch base tomorrow, then absolutely next week we can touch base and I can send you some resources and we can discuss from there.
Okay. Thank you guys very much.
Yep, good night. Right. Moving on to other business, inland wetland 180504, 173 Clark Avenue. Permit modification for a residential addition.
Jamie Frederick, in the Wetland Agent. So the commission approved an application for an addition. Of course, Peter just read the agenda and I wasn't paying attention. I was writing notes. At a residential property. Since the original approval was issued, the size of the addition scaled back significantly. So now what they're proposing to do is add a deck. It ends up being slightly less square footage than the originally proposed addition. And it's further away from the wetland. When they submitted the application for the deck, I also noticed that they had some modifications to the stormwater. So I reached out to the applicant about that. And initially they had proposed a rain gutter system that disperses the water as it overflows the edge of the gutter and disperses along the edge. They're still proposing that system, but where the deck is, it wouldn't really be conducive to have the stormwater collecting on top of the deck. So they're proposing to pipe those gutters to the parking area, so that the parking area is crushed stone. So it would have some infiltration, and also they're using perforated pipe in a crushed stone trench. So I wanted to bring it to the commission because it was a commission approved permit, and because of the stormwater change. Ultimately, as far as wetland impacts, I don't really see it having a significant impact. But again, as it was a permit issued by the commission, I didn't want to make that decision myself. So I can screen share the plans real quick if the commission wants to see that. So this was the originally approved site plan, the existing house, existing deck, parking area, and the proposed addition. And then this shows the gutter system that was proposed. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the here.
This is Commissioner Bassford. Jamie, basically you're saying it's further away from the wetlands and we're doing a better job of treating the water.
I think a different job of treating the water. So this is the proposed addition that was approved. This is the smaller addition, and you can see the originally approved addition footprint. This is the proposed deck. So it doesn't get any closer to the wetland, which is located down here. This property is actually the Rockland Park property that the commission just approved the conservation project on. So it's further away. And then the difference is that they're proposing to pipe the stormwater from here through a perforated pipe that ultimately discharges the back end of the, or I guess the front end of the parking lot, and then would have the ability to hopefully infiltrate a little bit through the parking lot before discharging into the road. So.
Looks okay to me.
Yeah, I'd let Jamie take care of it.
Since it's before the commission and it's a modification request, the commission can make a decision this evening.
I'll make a motion that we approve inland wetland 180504, the modification to the permit for 173 Clark Avenue, which shows a reduced addition and a change in the treatment of the stormwater.
Commissioner Boda, second.
Any discussion? Okay, we need a roll call. No, we need an individual vote here. Commissioner Boda,
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Finaro,
Commissioner Finaro, aye.
Commissioner Pepitonis,
Commissioner Papatonis, aye.
Mr. Begeman,
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Granalsh,
Commissioner Granalch, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Okay, 9 Tucket Road,
Okay, thank you, Jamie.
2022 deep aquatic pesticide application.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent, we received notice of an aquatic pesticide application. Usually the commission is informed of these, doesn't necessarily review it too much. 9 Tucket Road, we have received in the past, and it's a renewal permit, so nothing really new there.
3 to 7 Rockland Park 2022 deep aquatic pesticide application.
That permit coincides with the 3 to 7 Rockland Park conservation permit that was recently approved by the commission regarding the proposal to manage invasive species and replant with some predominantly native species. And the first cutting has already occurred. Application of herbicide won't occur though until the spring.
18 Wellesley Drive 2022 deep aquatic pesticide application. Interestingly enough, this is my property.
So you should probably recuse yourself for this item.
Very good.
I think you were gonna ask, Boda, do you mind chairing for this item? So again, pretty standard application. We're noticed of it so that we can provide comment to DEEP. I didn't see anything other than a minor typo, which I've informed the applicant of, basically indicating whether or not Branford is a coastal town. It was just a oversight, so they said they would fix it. Standard from there, unless the commission has any questions or wants to review it. All right, returning chair to the chairman.
Last up, correspondence and announcements.
Oh wait, there's one more. 45 to 81 Short Rocks Road.
Oh, wait a minute, what did I do? Look at the wrong, yeah, I guess I did.
Branford Supply Ponds, they'd come before the commission before indicating that they might be doing a treatment to control algae and other invasive species in the ponds. And so they're submitting their application to do that. There will also be some minor treatment of a small Phragmites stand, which will be a foliar application. No cutting is proposed.
Correspondence and announcements. We have an Amtrak 2022 veg control program.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. I feel like we just got this for the first time a year or two ago. I kind of take it as a notification of their standard vegetation management practices per federal regulation. They're required to maintain certain clearances of vegetation to help prevent fires in other dangerous situations. seems pretty standard and the same as the last one.
I guess we're gonna have a special meeting on the 17th to talk about our regulations. That was decided at the last meeting. And finally, we have a cause meeting.
Real quick before we move on to the next one, I am still working on trying to get final language drafted up for the bond. Specifically, I'm requesting town council review prior to sharing with the commission based on previous discussion. But I also want to get material out to commissioners so you can look at it before the meeting. Do you want me to send the rest of the sections out sooner rather than later so you have a chance to possibly look at it before the meeting on Thursday?
Yeah, I think anything in advance would be helpful.
And do people want paper copies of that material? Or is email fine?
Email works for me.
Getting lots of shaking head yes for email and a lot of shaking
Yeah.
head no for paper.
Email good.
Okay. All right.
Lastly, we have a cause meeting on March 9th. Having gone to a couple of cause meetings, I find them pretty informative, good cast of characters. If you can join up, that'd be great.
It's half a day, it's remote, it's $5. If you want to register, let myself know, preferably, because Abby's going to be on vacation next week, although we still have plenty of time, so either one's fine.
This is Commissioner Boder. Can you register me? I'll just say no.
What was it? I think I missed it.
March
The cause is the Connecticut Association of Wetland Scientists.
We'll send an email out tomorrow with some additional information.
Thank you.
And now we're at
They share a lot of, they often do a lot of, they'll share research that's interesting and helpful.
Now we're at the favorite part of the meeting. Somebody want to make an adjournment motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Everybody's jumping on to second. Commissioner Gurnall.
Abby needs to know who.
Seconded.
Reynolds.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Have a good
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.